Hi, I'm Ewan.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is
Popcorn and Cumin, a transatlantic dive into film and media.
With a healthy side of unrelated nonsense. Welcome to Popcorn and Cumin.
This week, we will be talking about one of the highest grossing movies ever.
And one of the former highest grossing movies. See if that helps you work it out if you haven't somehow managed to read the title of the episode.
It is
Titanic.
Woo! Yay, international tragedy. So, if it's not the highest grossing film, then what is? Is it Avatar?
I can't remember. It was Avengers Endgame at one point. Well, Avatar overtook Titanic. And then I think Endgame overtook Avatar, but then I think maybe Avatar was re-released before Avatar 2 came out, and now it's the highest grossing movie again. I think
it's not Titanic.
No, but it was for a long time. I think it was the highest grossing movie for like a longer period, because there's 10 years, I think, between this and Avatar. Well, actually, there's probably about 10 years between Avatar and Endgame, so I redact my previous statement.
Okay, but before we really get into the Titanic. Titanic? The Titanic. Titanic.
RMS Titanic. The
What's
movie
the movie
Titanic.
called?
Just Titanic.
Just Titanic.
Yeah.
First, I wanted to start off with a little country-specific trivia. We need to come up with a much better title for that.
Country-specific trivia. Just rolls off the tongue.
Every episode, I want to say one small difference between the UK and the US, and see at what point we run out of differences and realize that we're all human.
After all.
All human listening to Popcorn and Cumin.
Although, shout out to the AI listeners out there. We don't want to discriminate against any of those. You're still welcome even if you aren't human. But
well... Yeah.
Our assumption is you're human, but...
Dogs are encouraged. And cows.
What about cats?
They're tolerated.
You're so allergic to cats that you'd probably, even if a cat was listening on the other side of the world, it might somehow set off your allergies.
Yeah. If I sneeze during this, it's your fault, cat.
Yeah. Any sharp cuts you hear during the podcast is actually Sarah sneezing due to some leftover cat air in our flat. So,
yeah.
I mean our studio.
Oh, yes. Okay, so what is your UK trivia for the American listeners out there? What's a difference?
Sausages.
Just sausages.
Yeah, sausages are different in the UK versus the US.
Describe.
Well,
in what way?
I feel like in the US when you go to like grocery stores, the main differences are we have like British pork sausages. Well, I don't think they necessarily are British, but the pork sausages you get in the UK, which
they do normally say British pork sausages.
Yeah, well, that's.
And you say we're patriotic. We don't say like.
No.
American grown sausages.
No, in the UK it's not British pork sausages. That's not what it says, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, do you mean like
on the package?
Oh, right, okay. Well, that's a big push to. It's about like sustainable farming. I think.
Right, well,
it's
that's
people
nice.
like things that are grown in the UK because you're cutting down on like importation, exportation. I don't know.
You sure it's not?
Yeah, maybe it's just the Brexit mentality. Everything needs to be wholly UK based.
And in the US, we have, a
much better selection of chicken sausages.
Yes.
There's
no chicken apple sausages here in the UK, which I didn't even used to love them so much until I couldn't have them, and now whenever I go back, it's just a delight. Okay, Ewan's is just sausages.
Well, you sprang it on me. I wasn't expecting this.
Well, I didn't even think of one. I sprang it on myself. Okay, mine is most flats don't
/ apartments
have central heating.
Where?
In the UK.
What?
You don't have central heating. You just have little things on the wall that make heat. It's basically like you have portable
things on the wall that make heat. Also known as radiators.
Radiators, or sometimes known as escalators.
That's a real throwback to when me and Sarah, prior to our relationship even beginning, I think, I accidentally misspoke and said the word escalators instead of radiators, and Sarah thought it was hilarious. So
Yes.
maybe that was just all part of my entrapment scheme.
Yeah. So yours is sausages and mine is radiators.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure if that's... I think that's maybe more anecdotal evidence based on the flats we've lived
No,
in.
okay. And don't have air conditioning.
Our flat in Edinburgh... Our flat in... You're saying too many now.
No, but it's the same... Because in the US, I think it's the same system. Like, the AC and the heat comes out of the same vents. What?
Okay. No, I understand what you mean.
They're connected.
Yeah. It's the same vents.
Okay, moving on from that. Now we can actually talk about sinking ships.
Yeah.
Or one sinking ship in particular.
Yeah. Probably some of the lifeboats sank as well.
Oh.
Well, actually, probably not because they didn't have enough people on them.
Yeah. Well, in the movie, one of them overturns.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that. Just to clarify, we did watch this movie like 4 weeks ago.
No. It's very recent in our minds.
Yeah.
So I think for this one, we are just going to do spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert, the ship sinks.
Yeah. That might be shocking to some of you.
Yeah. But before any of that happens, we start off with Sweet Jack.
No. We start off
I forgot.
We start off in the present.
Yes.
And a man is looking for something. We're not sure what, but he's looking through the depths, the sunken depths of the ocean, the sunken wreck of the RMS Titanic.
Yeah.
And we're like, he's picking things up in this little submersible robot. And we're not sure what he's doing.
Yeah, and the only thing I could think when all this was happening was, look at that, he's not using a
Xbox controller.
A
knockoff Xbox controller.
To control this ship.
Yeah. It's amazing how far we've fallen in the 25 years since Titanic came out.
How many tragedies can we have that are connected to this ship?
What we're referencing, of course, is the recent news story, I suppose in the past 6 months or something, related to the Titanic, where a billionaire/millionaire, I don't know, and a host of other foolish mortals went on a ill-fated voyage to the depths of the sunken depths of the Titanic in a, I guess, experimental type of submarine, which seemed like it was put together with, I don't know, spit and
nuts and
wallpaper.
bolts.
So and then imploded, and unfortunately, on a sort of humanistic level, all of the people on that submersible died.
Yeah, it is quite sad. And in the movie, the scenes that you see when they're going through the rubble of the Titanic, that is the real Titanic. I think I read that even before the script was written, they went down and shot the footage of the Titanic wreck.
Well, James Cameron is like really into deep sea exploration. Like, I think that's what he spent a lot of the money he's made on.
That's terrifying.
Well,
does he do it himself? Is he like...
I think he like goes on the submarines and stuff, but I don't know if he's necessarily like he's not like qualified, and like I don't think he could like, I don't know, pilot a submarine, but he's funded a lot of exploration of like the Marinade Trench, which is the deepest point on Earth,
where marinara pasta comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
They
we got it from an eel.
Trench.
Yeah, an eel in the bottom of the trench. So yeah, I think that's something that he's sort of into. I think he made another movie called The Abyss that is also about
that sounds terrifying.
Deep sea things.
The deep sea is a very scary place that I never want to see.
There's no light.
No.
And we can't survive under there because of water pressure.
And because we can't breathe underwater.
Well, we've sort of managed to work that one out. to a better extent than the pressure thing. I think the pressure is the real...
Like, okay.
The
Well,
real-
did you say we can't live down there?
No.
Or we can't go
Well,
down
no,
there?
we can in the year 3000.
We can live down. Who would want to live in the
Not much has
Marinara
changed.
Trench? Oh, not much has changed. But
Shh,
they
we'll get
live
copyrighted.
underwater. Is that... That's
originally
just the Jonas Brothers.
No, it's originally by a UK group called Busted,
but
and then the
is
Jonas
the-
Brothers stole the song.
Wait. But what was the original the same song? Because the Jonas
Yes.
Brothers did it for a movie.
Mhm.
What is that called? Meet the Robinsons.
Right.
How did I know that? But I
You,
think...
you do host a movie podcast.
True. But they also did We're the Kids of the Future, which was not a parody, just an adaptation of We're the Kids of America, you know?
Right.
We're the Kids of America.
Yeah, I know the song.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm wondering
I
if
was trying to assess how creatively interesting I thought that was. I've decided it is not very... It's a good trivia for you to share. I just mean on their part to have released such a thing, I'm not sure is quite as profound as maybe they thought it was.
It is. It's very profound. So I'm wondering if the year 3000 they changed for the movie.
I don't think they changed it.
It's just a cover.
No, I'm not super familiar with the Jonas Brothers version, but I think it's just a cover. Sorry to disappoint you.
Okay. What were we talking about?
We're talking about deep sea exploration.
Right, okay.
And having watched the movie, I do, as much as I feel bad for those explorers who perished, I do find something quite unsettling about wanting to spend your time and money and sort of getting your kicks out of exploring the watery mass grave of a thousand unfortunate poor people who died due to terrible planning and arrogance and greed.
I also, well, just while we're on this topic, I somewhat recently read Our Wives Under the Sea, which is sort of oh my goodness, it's a horror, kind of horror. It's just a sort of unsettling literary fiction, women's fiction. And one of them is a deep sea explorer. And then, things maybe don't go very well. And it was very good, and I very much would recommend it. But it was really weird because I read it right before the whole Titanic thing. The
Titanic. You read it before the Titanic happened?
Yeah, back in 1915. When did the Titanic sink?
I'm not sure. We did extensive
I think it was
research.
in the 20s, wasn't it?
No, I think it was 1912.
Oh. Back in 1912, I was reading this book. No. Before the explorer people went down there and had the horrible accident. Mm-hmm. And the sort of descriptions of that were quite similar to the book. But anyway, I would recommend Our Wives Under the Sea. Mm-hmm. Good book.
So the premise of Titanic, we get what really we would suggest is, in my opinion, completely unnecessary exposition framing device of a modern storyline where they're looking for... This exploration team are going through the Titanic's remains to look for this, what do they call it? The lost diamond of the sea or something?
The heart of the sea?
Yeah.
The heart of the ocean?
Yeah, something like that. Something silly like that. And then they find this empty safe, or they find a safe and they pull it up and they're all excited and then they open it and they're like, huh, it's empty. But then they find something that leads them to get in contact.
They find the photo of Rose.
The drawing, yeah.
The drawing of Rose.
Uh-huh.
Naked drawing.
Yeah, and then Rose, whatever her name is now an old woman, and she sees this discovery on TV, and then she decides, I want my 15 minutes of fame. So she calls this exploration team and says...
What does she say? She's like, it's been 85 years or something
84
like that.
years.
Oh,
yeah.
I was close.
Yeah. And then she says, now I'm going to tell you where this heart of the sea is, but actually, spoilers for Titanic, I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to lie and say that it was lost, but in fact, actually, I've had it the whole time.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to throw it in the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
And then the team finds it, because they're like, oh, hang on, it was just here all along.
Yeah. That was probably our main complaint about the Titanic, is that we both thought that you didn't really need the whole framing thing. I mean, at the end, it is a bit, you know, funny. You're like, haha, she tricked them, and I guess it's sort of symbolic and stuff. But I don't think you need the framing. And in an already 3-hour long film, if you don't need it, get it out of there.
I think if they got rid of all the modern side of things, they would have got rid of like 45 minutes, which would have taken Titanic from being an exceedingly long film to just a long film. Yeah. Which I would say is an improvement. I think you could probably cut out like at least half of the modern stuff, even if you wanted to keep it in and not lose anything.
I bet though, now knowing what we know, I bet James Cameron was like, well, I've made them pay for this deep sea exploration. Now I've got to put it in there somehow.
I wouldn't, like, even if they did the opening shots where they find the painting and then it just goes like, woo, and you like go into the painting. Yeah.
I like when it does, if it starts with that, then I would want it to end with that.
They definitely don't need the bit in the middle where you get pulled out of the past storyline to the present and then everyone's just looking at Rose telling her story and then being like, yeah, it seemed like it was like the intermission of the movie.
Yeah.
But instead it just...
Yeah, it felt like they were trying to do like The Princess Bride or something, where the little kid keeps kind of interrupting with little like tidbits and sort of funny... Like there's supposed to be funny moments where one of the guys is like, oh, this is so boring. Why do we have to listen to this old lady? And it's like supposed to be funny, but I was kind of just like, can we get back to the ship, please?
I need to know if it sinks or not.
Yeah.
Now, I think probably the reason why they decided to add that in was because they needed a reason to like hook people in, because people would have said, we know the boat sinks, so what is the plot, you know?
What are the stakes? And so so that adds just a little bit of mystery to it, of like, how did this woman get...
But I don't think that people would have like been watching the trailers being like, I need to know what happens to that necklace.
Yeah.
And also when you're watching the movie, I don't really care about that anyway, so it didn't really keep me more invested. But that being said, I was quite invested in the past plot of Jack and Rose meeting, falling in love, and then dying.
Not all of them.
Half.
Only half
the better
of them.
half.
You think?
Yeah, well, in my copious notes here, I do have that Rose actually starts out, I think, as being quite unlikable, but I think that's because she's just kind of like...
That's the point.
Yeah, well, exactly, but I think like...
It's her riches to rags story.
All of the characters around her, apart from Kathy Bates, are kind of so horrible that I think it makes you like her more, because you sort of understand the environment she's living in and growing up in, etc.
Yeah, and you also see that in a classic rich girl way, she's trapped and she doesn't like the position she's in and the life she's in. And that's how her and Jack meet, is because she's actually trying to throw herself off the boat. And then he stops her. Yeah,
well, there's this sort of interesting, I guess, narrative thing where Rose sort of sees the voyage of the Titanic to her sailing to her doom, really, where she's going to be trapped in this loveless marriage with this man she hates. And I guess she was sailing to her doom, but not in the way that she thought.
But she got out of it.
Yeah, but her heart was forever broken.
That's true.
And probably quite traumatized as well.
But she got the heart of the ocean, so
yeah, but she didn't do anything with it, and then threw it in the ocean.
Why did she keep it all that time? Because it's not like Jack gave it to her. Her naughty, mean fiance gives it to her.
Yeah.
Or he gives it to her, and then she also steals it because he takes it back and puts it in the safe.
I think you could argue that her throwing it in the ocean at the end is actually kind of selfish. She could have sold it and then given the money to charity.
Yeah?
Because it's worth a whole lot of money. I mean, she saw 84 years ago thousands of unfortunate poor people trying to make a better life for themselves be completely disregarded by an aristocratic upper class, middle upper class, where they were basically left to die. I mean, there's scenes in the Titanic when it's sinking where the crew are lamenting that the boats aren't full, because I think Rose's mom even says, like, I hope they don't put too many more people in this boat. It's going to be like uncomfortable or whatever.
Yeah.
And you just sort of are like, it's literally a life or death scenario.
I don't want to be squished.
Yeah.
It's like me on the tube.
Yeah. I don't want to be around too many poor people in this scenario.
And they lock the poor people as the boat's sinking.
Yeah.
They like, ugh.
One of the interesting things is that they mention a couple times during the movie, and this is something that is, if you know like really anything about the Titanic, I think we maybe did a little bit of it as a history project in primary school, is that it's about this whole thing. It's the ship that couldn't sink. It's the ship that couldn't sink, and then it's this ironic thing that on its maiden voyage, its first voyage across the ocean, it sinks.
Yeah.
But whoever came up with the idea that it couldn't sink, like what? I mean, either a marketing genius or just completely. It's just nonsense, because there's a scene in the movie where they strike the iceberg. Spoiler alert, I don't think we've mentioned the iceberg yet, but the Titanic
the character of the iceberg.
The Titanic hits an iceberg and sinks. And there's this thing where there's a bunch of like compartments that can be sealed up individually to stop the water flowing in. Basically what happens is too many of those compartments get filled up with water before they manage to seal them, and then the water...
How hard can it be to seal them?
Well, I think they're just too slow. There's too much water coming in. But exactly. So
did they test this boat?
They report to the I don't know, the designer of the boat who's on the ship, who's, I guess, an interesting character. They sort of position him as being this sort of plague genius, where he sort of has nice qualities to him, and he sort of is bemoaning that there isn't enough lifeboats on the boat because people said it was going to look cluttered and stuff. But then I'm like... Yeah. I mean, could you not have put your foot down and done something about that instead of just being like, oh, well, I guess I don't really agree with this, but I'm just going to go along with it anyway. And then he basically, they're like, oh, these compartments are full now. And he's like, it's not a question of if the boat will sink, it will sink. So it's like, it's not an unsinkable ship, is it? It's just a boat that could sink if this very specific thing happens. But given that it does... on its first voyage, this specific thing happens. It's not like that unsinkable.
Well, it feels like maybe they were tempting fate, and God said, "This is unsinkable." Yeah. Iceberg. Yeah. Bitch.
In legal terms, there is a Latin phrase called force majeure, which means an act of God, which is a way of people basically getting out of breach of contract if it's deemed. Basically the duties of the contract were unenforceable because something completely unforeseen happened, which like fundamentally changed their ability to fulfill the contract. But it's a very like high bar. So even if it was something like, oh, there was a storm happening on this day, so we couldn't sail to deliver this thing, they would have said, well, did you know that the storm was going to happen? If so, could you have made plans to get around that?
Yeah.
If you had sailed and your boat was struck by, I don't know, lightning and then set on fire and everything burned down or whatever, that probably would be given as force majeure.
Yeah.
The Titanic, I'm not sure.
Do they not have radars that can detect large objects such as icebergs?
Well, I mean, they see it coming. They're going too fast and don't steer out the way in time.
But they see it, well, by the time they see it, it's like pretty big.
Yeah.
Is it just because it's so dark, or do you think they... Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it is kind of strange to think of because a boat can only go so fast and the iceberg can only be so big.
Yeah.
And how far do you need to steer left or right of it to avoid it? But
well, they try.
Yeah, well, they sort of scrape it up the side.
Yeah.
You sort of wonder, would they have been better off just ploughing into it head first and had that sort of point to maybe get through it? Or maybe they just run aground on the iceberg and then everyone can get off onto the iceberg and wait for people to be rescued.
Yeah.
Instead of
and there is that,
in the water.
Even right after it scrapes and it sounds really bad and stuff. But even after that, even though I obviously know what's going to happen, there still was a part of my mind that was like, well, that didn't seem so bad. Maybe it's not going to sink. I know, I know it's going to. But because it takes such a long time for it to sink, and it takes such a long time for people to realize that it's actually going to sink. Like, I think that's something that's done really well in the movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, the time it takes to sink is a very long, maybe a little bit too long. I think it happens like an hour and 45 minutes in or something. So that means almost half of the movie is just the boat sinking. But I think the period of different people starting to realize that, wait a minute, we're like actually really screwed. I think that, it's like horrible, but it's like, it's really, what's the word, harrowing?
Yeah. No, it's definitely unsettling. It's
Yeah.
like, and you feel like awful for the people who are trapped in it because, I mean, you're like, I guess, rooting for Jack and Rose to survive as your main characters,
Yeah.
but
Screw everyone else.
Well, but like, especially like the poor people who are on the lower decks and stuff, they're like not getting off the boat.
Yeah. So we've just gotten to the point of sinking. Let's just keep talking about those sort of scenes. We found on, I don't know, TikTok, Instagram, some sort of behind the scene footage of them shooting some of these scenes, like the bigger sort of drowning sequences, but inside the ballroom. And it looked so chaotic. And it's kind of cool that it was actually sort of real, like the way they were filming it. It was more special effects, at least within the boat, than like CGI. But it also looked terrifying just to film it.
Yeah, all the water like rushing in and stuff.
Yeah, and people were like trying to climb up banisters and then falling back into the water, and it's just like such large scale tragedy must be so hard to film. Doing
stunts with water can be like really dangerous as well. Like I think there's in the first Mission Impossible, I think there's a scene where Tom Cruise is basically like running away from it's like a building. I think it might be like an aquarium or like a sort of fancy restaurant that has like a pool of water on the top floor, and it like, as he's running away from it like shatters and like it all falls like behind him. And apparently, like, I mean, this is the classic like Tom Cruise Mission Impossible stunt, but if he had been slower to run or something, all of that water would have like fallen on his head and he would have died.
Wow.
Because it's like, I don't know the amount of the heaviness of the water or something.
That still doesn't sound as scary as that stunt we saw where he drives off of a cliff on a motorcycle. Yeah,
no, that was insane. Yeah, and the thing is with the water one in that the one I'm just referencing, it doesn't even look that impressive like on film. So I'm like, I don't.
Was it worth it?
No.
That man really has a death wish.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, he was actually considered for the role of Jack.
Really?
Yeah. Along with, I have a list here. Matthew McConaughey, I think, was one of the front runners, and he ended up not getting it. As opposed,
I presume all of these people didn't get it.
Listen. Yeah, that was actually Matthew McConaughey. You didn't notice that?
Yeah.
Ka-chow. But as opposed to Johnny Depp, who turned it down, versus Matthew McConaughey would have taken it, but he didn't get the role.
Okay, interesting.
Johnny Depp turned it down. Another person considered was Macaulay Culkin.
Wow.
Yeah. I think he probably would have wanted it because now he still mostly is only remembered for Home Alone.
I mean...
Good movie, though.
Yeah. I like Home Alone more than Titanic.
Yeah, they're very different, I would say. Also considered was Brad Pitt and Christian Bale. And apparently Christian Bale and Leonardo DiCaprio around this time were going after a number of roles, and Leonardo kept getting them, and Christian Bale referred to him as his nemesis.
Really?
Yeah.
That's maybe what drove him to doing American Psycho, so he could get out some of that rage.
Yeah. And then for Tom Cruise, his asking price was too high, so they didn't go with him. That's
interesting. I feel like Brad Pitt's like quite a bit older than the rest of them. I mean, I might be wrong about that, but the rest of them... I think
the ages did vary. I think even Matthew McConaughey was like 12 years older than... One of them...
is Brad Pitt, I think.
Brad Pitt?
I think Matthew McConaughey's about the same age as DiCaprio, maybe
Really?
younger.
He seems older.
I don't think so.
Can you do a McConaughey impression?
No.
All right, moving on. What we're talking... What?
I was thinking about doing that bit in Inception when he starts going, "Don't let me leave, Murph," and then he just goes like, "Oh."
No, I do not remember that. Okay, so those people were considered for Jack. Obviously, Leonardo DiCaprio got it, and I think is perfect as Jack.
Does a good job. Yeah.
I think he brings a sort of boyish charm to the role.
Yeah. He's a real scallywag. He feels like he's right out of a Charles Dickens novel.
Yeah. So Rose is played by...
Kate Winslet.
Thank you. But also considered for the role was Gwyneth
Paltrow.
Paltrow, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're finishing my sentences.
Yeah.
Drew.
Barrymore.
Nicole.
Kidman.
Claire.
Balding.
No, Danes.
Yeah. Claire Balding is a BBC tennis presenter, and I think maybe former tennis pro.
That's
that was,
very random.
Yeah,
You don't
that was
follow
a,
tennis.
That was a joke answer.
Okay, two more.
I think a bit of trivia for you. Claire Danes, I think, was in the Romeo and Juliet movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think they hated each other. So maybe that's why they didn't. Maybe that's why she didn't get it.
Oh dear. Yeah, probably. Also considered Reese.
Without her spoon?
Well, no, with her spoon.
Oh, okay.
And Winona.
Horse rider?
No, just writer.
Okay.
Apparently, Kate Winslet was... So a lot of those people actually turned it down. And Kate Winslet really wanted this role, and she really harassed James Cameron into getting it, basically, because he thought, you know, that she was passionate about the role and really wanted it.
And then James Cameron thought, let's see how these turn tables.
Yeah. And I think she even sent him a rose or something and said, like, from your rose or something very cheesy like that. But then apparently she also really harassed him to choose Leonardo DiCaprio. But it ended up really working out in terms of the movie, because I think they have really good chemistry. And although Kate Winslet, I don't know, sometimes she kind of always looks like she's kind of like grimacing. But I think that her and DiCaprio are a nice opposites attract.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just think they have good chemistry.
Yeah, no, I think the romance side of things in the movie is pretty strong. When it sort of turns into a disaster movie midway through, it sort of
tragedy, romantic tragedy.
Yeah. Well, the story is, but what you're actually like watching is like a disaster, which is also pretty, I guess, compelling in a sort of morbid sense.
Yeah.
You can't look away.
Yeah, exactly.
What my reference to before when I said James Cameron thought we can turn these tables on Kate Winslet harassing me was apparently Kate Winslet was one of the only characters who was unable, because of her costumes, to wear like a wetsuit under her clothes when they were like filming scenes. So the amount of time she spent in the water, she ended up getting hypothermia.
Yeah. It sounded like
hellish.
Not just for her, although she also apparently chipped her elbow bone during filming too.
Elbow bone?
Yeah. I think it seemed, especially all the water filming was quite horrible for pretty much everyone involved. Apparently, James Cameron wouldn't let them get out of the water between takes to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
So everyone was just peeing in the pool.
Yeah, it's realistic. That's method acting.
I guess they should do that in the real Titanic situation. That might have saved some of them, because pee warms you up.
That might have saved some of them. That's your sympathy, is it?
On my high school trip, when we went snorkeling, our teacher kept telling us to pee in our wetsuits because it would warm us up.
Wow. Well, they're not wearing wetsuits. Oh no, some of the actors were.
Yeah, the actors
they didn't die.
were.
None of the actors died, as far as I'm aware.
That's true, and she's the only one who got hypothermia because she wasn't peeing in her wetsuit.
Yeah.
That was the problem. Oh, another interesting thing that happened on set that I only just found out about it today, and then I looked into it a bit more. But apparently that someone laced the chowder,
clam chowder?
Well, see, some people say it's clam chowder, some people say it was lobster chowder. No one really knows. But someone laced the chowder on set with PCP, and so then everyone started. So James Cameron said that he had the chowder, and then he immediately felt weird, so he went outside and made himself throw up because he thought it was some form of seafood poisoning. I don't know, some very specific thing. And then he came back in, and everyone from the set was just gone, and he didn't know where they went. And then it turned out that everyone had been drugged and were high. And so then they all had to go to the hospital, and they tried to make them all sit in sort of separate booths and keep them separate and calm, but then they kept kind of going into each other's booths and just wreaking havoc. And at one point, someone started a conga line, and they were like pushing people in wheelchairs, like racing them down the halls of the hospital and stuff. It just sounds absolutely wild. And to this day, nobody knows who laced the PCP. There's a big investigation into it, but then after two years, people just stopped caring, and they didn't have like any suspects.
Wow.
Although James Cameron says that he said the day before, someone from the caterers had been fired from the set for some reason, had been told to leave.
Oh.
And he thought that they were disgruntled. And then...
My disgruntled ex.
Yeah. And then put PCP in the chowder to get back at the catering company for firing, because then they obviously fired the catering company.
That's the way to do it.
But the thing is that seems like a very obvious suspect, so I'm pretty sure that he would have been investigated, or she would have been investigated.
Do you think it's the person you most medium suspect?
Yeah.
But who's that?
Who's the one from The Office?
Phyllis?
No. No, who's the actress?
Oh, Kathy Bates.
Kathy Bates.
The one from The Office. Oscar-winning actor Kathy Bates.
Yeah.
The one from The Office.
Also, maybe James Cameron's wife, because apparently she didn't eat any of the chowder.
Oh. Is that Catherine Bigelow? She's a famous director.
I'm not sure.
But I think he was married to her, and he was also married to whoever the lead actor in Terminator is. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, I don't know if it was his wife at the time or his wife now. Someone he had relations with.
Wife in the future. Relations.
And somewhat speaking of Kathy Bates, so she plays a character called Margaret Brown. And some of these characters in the Titanic are actually based on real passengers from the Titanic. And this is one of them. So Margaret Brown is based on a passenger now known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. And so the real Molly Brown, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her, because she sounds cool. And I thought that Kathy Bates' character was one of my favorite characters, definitely of the rich people.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, she's meant to be like the nice one, I guess.
Yeah. Well, she was in real life too. So she was on Lifeboat 6 when the ship was sinking. And I think at first she was trying to help other people get onto the lifeboats. But then eventually someone was like, girl, get on a boat. So she got on Lifeboat 6. And then, like happens in the movie, the boat isn't completely full, and she tries to get the person in charge of the lifeboat, the crewmate, to go back and pick up other passengers and save other people. And the crewmate was like, no. Somewhat for the reasons in the movie, well, that the other people say that the boat will be sort of swarmed and they're afraid it'll be pulled under. And also because, what is it called? Because the ship is sinking and it's like pulling the water in. It's
kind of creating like suction.
Yeah, so they're afraid the boat will be sort of sucked under with the boat. Mm-hmm. There's a certain word for it. I can't think of what it is. So the crewmates said, no, I'm not turning the boat around. And she apparently threatened to like push him off the boat to throw him in the water, because she was really fighting to try to save as many lives as possible, which is really good. And then after the Titanic sank, she put together a committee of first class, that's what it said, of high society people who were trying to help working class people or survivors from the Titanic with basic necessities and counseling and stuff like that, which I think is really nice. I mean, they should have let them be on the committee as well. It's still a little...
Well, they probably would have asked for too much. You can't have people who are actually affected by issues on committee, Sarah.
Aside from that little... I think she sounds like she was a pretty cool person. And yeah, now she's referred to as the unsinkable. The Titanic was also referred to as unsinkable. So maybe that's kind of actually a curse. Dead
now, of course, though, I suspect. Yeah, well, so she wasn't like the Titanic. She wasn't actually unsinkable.
Yeah. That's your trivia of the real life Titanic passengers.
one of the things that we learned from our recent trip to Northern Ireland is that the Titanic is sort of held in sort of high regard because it was built in Northern Ireland, or in Belfast, I think specifically, which is of course like on like a sort of coastal city. It is kind of curious that it would be such a... Well, I guess we didn't go to the Titanic Museum, so
No.
I'm interested.
It's apparently supposed to be really cool.
Yeah.
It's in the shape of a ship, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But again, it seems like that they almost seem proud that it was built there.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
Well, I mean, at the time, it was...
It was
yeah.
one of the worst tragedies.
Yeah, I think it's one of the... I don't think it's the worst, but it's one of the worst maritime tragedies, and definitely one that's involving civilians, not a like military one or a navy one. Yeah, it does seem... I'm curious what the sort of argument to be celebratory of it. I suppose it probably was an achievement at the time to have built the biggest passenger ship in the world. However, I'm not sure if I would be so excited to be associating with something that is most associated with gross incompetence by the people running it and death of thousands of people.
And I'm sure it, you know, talks about the tragedy and all that of it, but it felt just like the marketing for the museum felt very much
riding the coattails of this movie as well.
Yeah.
Because people are like into the movie. I kind of wonder like how much of the sort of pop culture bandwidth the Titanic had like before the movie came out, because the movie's older than I am.
And there were previous adaptations of the tragedy. I didn't look too much into them, but I mean, obviously none of them were as culturally important.
Well, this took the world by storm.
It did.
I do remember growing up watching like a made-for-TV movie called Titanic 2, which I thought was curious, which is about, I think some like billionaire or whatever comes up, he's like, I need to make another Titanic, and guess what happens to it?
It sinks.
Yep.
Well, that sounds like what happened in real life. That's the Titanic 3.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry, I thought you meant like there's another ship called the Titanic 3.
No,
you mean the submersible that exploded, imploded.
Should we be talking about it so lightheartedly?
I mean, it was memed a lot.
Yeah, that's
We're not
true.
making any memes. We're just saying it was probably foolish.
Yeah. I have one last trivia fact.
Didn't you say it was the end of trivia already?
No, the trivia never ends. Which this is probably more common knowledge, but I didn't know it. Apparently, James Cameron drew the drawing of Rose naked, which when I first heard it, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And then when I thought about it, I was like, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Like if I were...
An actor.
What's her name?
Kate Winslet.
If I were Kate Winslet... And the director, the older man director, because she was really young. She was like 20, either 21 or 22. And he drew, and she probably didn't pose for it. I hope she didn't pose for it. But even if she didn't, I would feel really weird. I would feel weird about it.
Yeah, archetypes are kind of like voyeuristic in that way, though. It's like when we went to see The Burnt City, which is what was an immersive theatre experience in London, and I saw a man's penis because he just started stripping in front of me. An actor.
That is so different. That is so different.
No, it's not.
How is that the same as a...
Because actors don't mind being naked, that's the problem. That's what I'm saying.
But it's because it's such a different power dynamic of a male, older director and a young female actress. It feels a little more creepy. You know, if it was Leonardo DiCaprio doing it, that's fine.
What if he was doing it now?
Now? Oh, well, he wouldn't be doing it of her because she's over 25.
She wasn't then, though.
So if he were drawing a picture, he had time traveled to the past.
He time travelers wife's back. He accidentally time travels back to the set of Titanic and sees himself, younger DiCaprio, drawing young Kate Winslet.
Is that creepy? Is that the question?
Well, what if he like sort of switches place with him?
Yes. Just like how in The Time Traveler's Wife, I think it's a little creepy how he's so much older than her when he first meets her. It's very weird. It's kind of like
Not when he first meets her, when she first meets him.
When she first meets him.
Yeah. Spoilers for Time Traveler's Wife.
That's not really a spoiler. 10 pages. But it kind of reminded me, wow, we're going all over the place. It kind of reminded me.
This is what the trivia does, the never-ending trivia. We lose focus.
It reminded me of Twilight when Jacob imprints on Bella's daughter, and he's like, it's okay. Right now, I'm so much older than her, and I'll be whatever she needs at that time. So right now, I'll just be her friend. And then when she becomes of age, then, we'll start banging and it'll be totally fine.
Yeah.
That's like what it is in The Time Traveler's Wife. He's like, well, I'm old now, but someday, little kid, we're gonna bang.
I will use my influence over you as a friend/mentor figure to convince you in a natural way that you want to be in a sexual relationship with me.
Yeah.
There's no sort of moral quandaries with that. Don't worry.
Yeah. It's a little ick.
Yeah.
A wee bit. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah.
Do you have any other things you wanted to talk about?
I guess I did. I think I sort of, growing up when I'd previously seen the movie, I'm not actually sure if I've ever watched it all the way through before. I do remember like weirdly watching it during like a school, like a free period or something.
Okay.
Like I think, or maybe it was in like geography. I don't know. I don't know like why.
Geography.
Yeah, I don't know why. Or maybe it was during history.
This is an iceberg.
Yeah. But I do remember seeing like the sort of disaster-y scenes where like the ship is upturning. I did like the sort of romance side of things. Like I think previously I probably would have just said it was boring, but I did actually find it like quite compelling. I mean, it probably didn't need to be like as long.
Yeah.
And probably the ship sinking didn't need to be as long either.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I do think it's really good.
There is like a bit of melodrama, which is like a bit silly, with evil husband to be setting his like weird bodyguard who seems to just be like okay with maybe killing people. He's like threatening to shoot people. He does start shooting people at one point.
Yeah, well, that's the rich babe. That's the corrupt rich.
Yeah. And then there's the bit where she like goes to rescue Jack when he gets tied to a thing in the cellar, and then
babe, that really, I thought that was like terrifying.
It was when
she's going around trying to find him. It
was good, but he is like saying about how he's basically more concerned that Rose thinks he might have stolen her watch or something than he is with whether she's going to save him or not.
But I think that's because if they're about to die, he wants her to know what kind of person he is. He doesn't want her to think that he's...
Oh, no, I hadn't really considered that, I suppose. But it seemed like he was in a more mood where he wasn't really so certain he was going to die.
Yeah.
He seemed to be really clinging on to life until the very end.
Yeah. I quite like the part where he's locked up with handcuffs, right? Mm-hmm. And she finds an axe. I think it's a fire axe or something. And then he's like, okay, practice on there, try to hit that same mark again, and she totally misses, and he's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, no, that is good.
Yeah, and then she miraculously doesn't cut his arm off.
Mm-hmm. That was a bit convenient, I suppose, but it was a funny bit.
Yeah,
funny bit in the terror. Yeah. I think there is a scene like during the sort of height of disaster when they're underneath the decks in like a room that's filling with water, and then it sort of like fades to black. They're like in a really perilous situation, and it fades, and then they're just like out of the situation.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I'm sure there's a bit like that, and I remember thinking that's weird.
Huh.
I'm not sure if maybe that had been like an extra scene that was added in or something, but it was like, well, we've written ourselves into a corner here, fade to black, and they're out of it.
And then we'll just real quick mention, in a previous episode, we talked about a shot that I strongly dislike, which happens with Kate and Leo. Mm-hmm. What are their names?
Jack and Rose.
Jack and Rose, which is in a scene that I actually really like. And we watched it in my film class to talk about sound design. And it's in the sort of, I don't know, the cellar of... They go to where the working class people are hanging out and obviously having a much better party time than the rich people. And Leo Kate shows Rose a good old time, and there's a bunch of dancing and it's all fun, and then Rose gets up and somehow knows how to sort of jig and tap dance, and it's I don't know, it's quite fun. But then they start spinning, and they do the point of view shot when they're spinning, and it just looks so silly. It's so silly. And listen to our Carrie episode to understand why it is so silly. But I just had to mention that.
But I think probably loads of people have watched that and then gone on to make films and thought that scene in Titanic was great. Let's put that in our
James
movie.
Cameron did that. It must be good.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree. You hear me, James Cameron? I disagree. Stop giving
everything.
Kate Winslet hypothermia.
Do you think this is your favorite James Cameron movie? You've seen 4, I think.
2 Avatars, Titanic.
Terminator 1.
Oh, yeah. Of the ones I've seen, I think so.
I would probably have it as 4.
What? You like it the least?
No, I like it more than both Avatar movies.
Oh.
But I think Terminator 1 is his best. And then probably... I'm blanking.
Terminator 2?
Yeah, maybe Terminator 2 and Aliens are pretty close.
Oh, Alien.
And then
You like Alien.
Aliens. You didn't do the first one. And then, Titanic. I haven't seen The Abyss or True Lies. But it is good. It's a good movie. I liked it. I liked it more than I was expecting to.
We've almost been talking about the Titanic for as long
As the movie. Yeah.
So we're going to go into our segment.
Who's the real baddie?
Yay!
Yay!
Now, I propose that we come up with a quick list of suspects of the real baddie, or the biggest baddie. Mm-hmm. And then
in terms of what? In terms of their most evilness, or in terms of size? Because if it's size, there's an obvious winner.
Yes, that was going to be my first suggestion. Is the iceberg?
Yeah,
biggest baddie. But literally.
In defense of the iceberg, it is just minding its own business in the middle of the ocean.
I don't know. It seemed like it really just popped up there.
I think it moved to intercept the Titanic.
Yeah.
Something pushed it.
Yeah. Or it heard it, like in the distance, the iceberg heard someone say, "This ship is supposed to be unsinkable."
Yeah.
And it thought, my moment of fame has come.
Okay, yeah. So the iceberg is a big show. That's a big early lead, I think, for the iceberg.
Okay, what's your suggestion?
We have Billy Zane's character, which is Rose's fiance, who, for anyone out there who's seen the movie Help, I'm a Fish, he really looks like the evil fish in that. Look up Help, I'm a Fish, and I think the character is called Joe.
Rogue.
I think he looks like him a lot.
Okay, he's gonna show me a picture of it. Okay, maybe. All right, I've seen the photos. I'm not totally convinced.
Look it up for yourselves. Okay. Sarah's lacking in her comparative skills at the moment.
Okay, so he's another suspect. What do we know the character's name? Just the fiance.
Zane, Billy Zane, Rose's fiance.
Yeah, he does suck. He's the one that I wanted to strangle the most.
And he tries to get on a lifeboat with a kid, pretending it's his. He tries to kill. He just starts shooting at Rose and Jack for no reason.
While
really.
everyone's drowning.
Yeah. He's a hateful little man.
Another big baddie, person who designed the ship.
Yeah.
Although they do make him likable in it.
There's another kind of like suit and tie character. I'm not entirely sure. I think he's like from the like company that owns it or something. And he's who encourages. He's like, it's not enough for the ship to be unsinkable. It has to set records. And he's like who encourages the captain to, because he wants it to get like good press. So he encourages them to go like full steam ahead.
He wants it to get into port early. So then they're going way too fast to be able to avoid Big Baddie Iceberg.
And I think in terms of the real story for the Titanic, probably he is the big baddie.
I think maybe also the people who said that the boat was too cluttered and said that they needed to remove the lifeboats.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't going to be enough lifeboats, I think, based on my understanding, even if they hadn't done that. But that really goes to show how little lifeboats they had.
Yeah. Anyone else? The mom kind of sucks, but I don't think she's the big baddie.
No, I mean, she does suck. I wouldn't say she sort of stacks up to the other people we've mentioned. Well, I mean, I guess I wouldn't really say the ship architect guy either. Sort of stacks up in the same way.
What about the butler man?
Yeah, his lackey. Yeah. Billy Zane's lackey. No, yeah, he's bad as well.
Yeah. All right, I have Oh, you had another one as well.
Yeah.
It was all of you.
My suggestion for the biggest baddie is all the people who make a big deal that there is room for both Jack and Rose on the bit of driftwood that Rose is sort of saved by at the end of the movie. Because have you ever been on anything in a body of water? If you have two people on something, it might sink. It doesn't really matter if there's room for both of them. It's not going to work. And even if it sinks a little bit into the water and it's still buoyant, they're both going to get really wet, and Rose would maybe still die from freezing.
Now,
she almost dies even without being in the water.
I think that they did this on Mythbusters.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Do you know what the results were?
I'm going to say it was whatever I said, and that it wouldn't have worked if there's not enough. Like, there might be room for both of them, but I don't think the thing would have stayed afloat.
I'm going to look it up.
Okay, we've just fact-checked what we were saying, and apparently there's a sort of contention regarding the myth-busting because...
Yes, it has caused drama.
Yeah.
And caused James Cameron to say that...
The Mythbusters are full of...
Shit.
Bleep.
We already swore. I did.
Foul-mouthed Sarah swearing again.
Yeah, that's me.
Hurting our ad revenue.
So, the Mythbusters... repeated the Titanic. Basically, they had a piece of driftwood, and at first it seemed like, so they tried to get the two hosts onto the driftwood, like if Jack and Rose were on it, and it was too wobbly and they couldn't stay on it. So at first they were like, well, this myth is, what is it, concluded? The opposite of busted. But then they had the idea to take off the life jackets and put them under the driftwood to keep it afloat. And that ended up working very well. And so that's how they could have been saved. And James Cameron apparently was on the show. And when he was on the show, conceded that he basically... Screwed up. But then 4 years later...
He's reversed it.
Yeah.
He says they're wrong.
He's sticking to his guns, and he said that Jack would have frozen of hypothermia before he had time to get on the driftwood and put the life jacket under it.
And also, for all the people out there saying it's a plot hole, if your contention is that they could have put the life jacket under the bit of wood to keep them up, I mean, they're not...
Gonna think of that.
Yeah, they're not like engineers.
And it's also, if Jack is already in the water... the process of getting up on the driftwood, there's a decent likelihood that he'll end up flipping it, and that then they probably both would have died.
Yeah.
Because she would have ended up in the water and might not have been able to get back on, or would have just frozen to death. I mean, she was like inches from death when she was rescued. So I think any contact with the water, she would have probably been dead. So maybe I'm...
with me,
I'm against the I'm against the majority who say that there was room on the driftwood.
It's not as simple as that, though. You have to think outside the box. Think critically.
Think about science, people.
Yeah. Have you ever jumped onto something like a life raft or something from, like in a swimming pool, like onto something? It's not stable. No. It's wobbling all over the place.
And it's the ocean, big rolling waves, and his boat is sinking, so there's probably huge disturbance in that water. So anyway, back to the big baddie.
Yeah. I guess the big baddie of most things is the class system.
Well, yeah.
That kept the poor people down below. Yeah. You could sort of combine what we've been saying for a lot of them, where if they cared more for the lower class people in the boats, they would have made sure there was enough lifeboats for everyone and not just for the rich people.
Yeah. No, that is a good one. I mean, it's not really a person.
No.
Or a thing.
Harder to take that down than an iceberg.
Yeah. Okay, do you have your big baddie?
Yeah. I'm going to relent on my scorn for people suggesting the door theory is
Was
wrong.
it a door? Or just
I think it's a piece of a door.
Oh.
Some driftwood. What does that mean?
That's what it is. Driftwood is because the boat broke.
Yeah.
So now there's just wood floating around.
I guess, yeah. It's not a wooden boat, though.
I don't know. I thought
what defines a piece of driftwood? Is it wood that is drifting?
It's wood that is drifting through the ocean. Okay, we're going to say our big baddie on 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. The iceberg.
Oh! Nice. Because really, if there was no iceberg, none of this would have happened.
It's true.
Well, actually, some of it might have happened. Billy Zane might have still gone mental and tried to shoot Jack.
That's true. And
In fact, he might have been shot because don't they take him like downstairs into that thing before they know the boat is sinking? Or do they already know the boat is sinking?
I think it's before they know the boat is sinking.
Yeah, because Jack might actually have died anyway, even if it
I
didn't
don't think
sink.
he would just shoot him. I think they were taking him, like they were going to put him in jail or something.
You don't think he would have shot him if he I think he might have shot him.
If Jack, like,
We can't rule it out.
taunted him, maybe.
Chekhov's gun dictates if you see a gun in the first act, it must go off in the third or second. I'm not sure which one it's meant to be.
All right, well, we actually agreed on a big baddie.
That was our Titanic discussion.
Yes. Big boat, go bye-bye. To bottom of ocean.
Yeah. Just for the record, Titanic's not even that big a boat compared to modern boats. It's dwarfed now. Imagine how big one of those boats' wreckage would be.
Well, let's not think about that. Don't tell my mom that. Goodbye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Popcorn and Cumin. We are now on Instagram. You can find and follow us at Popcorn and Cumin. That's "and" spelled out rather than an ampersand. Again, that is Popcorn and Cumin. We'll be sharing some spicy updates and fun little videos and stuff, so check it out. And if you like the show, tell your friends. Until next time, don't forget to have your daily bowl of popcorn.